week's Fight Chat Friday, we've decided to take a little bit of a look at a kind of a predominant sparring style that you'd see in a lot of the female divisions, particularly the junior female divisions, where we're really looking at how the front leg is used to dominate space, start controlling distance and tempo. And we picked a few examples out, just girls who've been really successful over the last few years, both junior and senior, and just taking a look at how they use that front leg, how they cover distance, and how they threaten the headshot the whole time. So we're looking at Isabelle Schandler, Maeve Magee, both girls who've been very successful in the 75 kilo division, senior female. We're having a look at Katriona Carr, who from junior to senior has been very successful, particularly in the lighter divisions, 45 and 50 kilo junior and up 56 kilo senior. And then also looking at Tyra Barada, who of course is a little bit newer onto the scene, and her front leg is just so rangy, and just want to have a look at how they're using it, how they're preparing it, and maybe what you'll need to be able to do to work around it or to emulate the style that they've got.
And last week as well, in our video where we compared the male and female divisions, we noticed as well that the senior females especially are very focused on getting that leg to get you into hands. So that'll be an interesting little thing to have a look at as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to see that even in some of the clips where we're looking to highlight the use of the leg. You're still going to see how that lets them follow through into hands and gives that little bit of security that you've already beaten the front leg. You don't need to beat the front leg with movement or with feints. You've kicked over the leg and closed the distance that way. So I think we'll have a look at Tyra first of all, just to see the kind of the extreme end of what you can do when you've got a very flexible leg. And in this match, we've just taken a few little clips. It's the finals of the European Championships in Bosnia, and she's competing against Taylor Smith, who again has a very, very flexible and strong front leg as well. So we've just picked a few of the highlight kind of clips out of that one.
Yeah, so right off the bat, one of the things that stands out for me is the posture. So the fact that you can have a tall body position makes a massive difference when you're carrying that leg, because it sets you up nicely to use the hands if necessary. Whereas if you're leaning back a lot and you have to lean to carry that kick, not only will the kick be slower coming forward, but it will also take a long time to transition your body weight for you to be able to punch effectively.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, it requires huge range of motion at the hip to be able to do it. So there's a lot of strength and physical development that goes into being able to do this style. But the other thing that it does is once you lift that front leg and the knee is in front of the chest or the shoulders, you've got a lever carrying you forward. So your forward momentum has started, just because you haven't tilted the body back, you haven't put your center of gravity behind your hip. And so you're not fighting against part of your body wanting to bring you backwards and part of your body wanting to bring you forwards. So if you can stay tall like that, your momentum is forward right away, and it's very positive in terms of, you can see how Tyra carries. Like every time the leg comes up, she is carrying forward.
And that's a very valid point, because that's a massive part, especially when you have two girls like this who are kind of cancelling each other out in terms of flexibility on the front leg. It's the person who's able to get off first and get a good start, build that momentum, is usually the one that will get the outcome on the exchanges from the referees. So we can see it here, kind of sets up other techniques as well. So being first, I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you're the person with the leg that begins, and you can get that on top, I think it sets you up for a nice little start.
Yeah, and we're looking at a very, very short, very quick preparation from Tyra in terms of how she sets her back foot. Like it's only a couple of inches. It's probably just enough to pop the heel in and let that front leg come up in a better with the back foot in a better pushing position. I think we were saying earlier, it's enough that you'll see it, but not enough that you can really react to it. So I don't think
exactly
you can use that as a read so that you can beat her to hands.
And I think the posture actually helps that as well, because she doesn't have to lean or transition her body weight too much for her to lift that leg. She can literally just lift it and use it as a jab, like she can use from her hand, or anybody else would use from their hand. They just extend it. It's the same. So instead of extending it, it just lifts, and there's no adjustments to be made anywhere else, to compensate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like that. If we might look later at some of the examples of how you might work against somebody whose front leg works like this, but one of the options that isn't available to you because of just how quickly that foot is between her and her opponent is that coming to hands, like there is very, very difficult to do. You know, you have to go before the leg lifts, and you know, where if you're reacting to the leg lift, it's, you know, the foot's already going to be up past your hip and potentially in your face before you're there. So you need to take a different strategy. You need to come onto a different line.
I think there's a few interesting points that contribute to this as well. Number one, the fact that when she does lift, she's taking very small steps on her standing foot, which it actually makes it hard for the other person to read the change in rhythm and to find the gap in the rhythm to get in there and to find your opportunity, because it's almost like constant because the steps are so quick and so small. Whereas if you were taking big labored steps, it would give the opponent an opportunity to find that gap between steps to get you in there. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that I would look at as well is the knee position. So the fact that she starts off very high, that knee is in the way. So no matter what you do from there, if you're coming forward, there's going to be a threat of her being able to kick, and probably to the head as well. You'll be able to, you can see it just in that last clip where it goes from straight up into the high section. So there's a big threat there of a headshot just to risk it to get into hands. So it might not be the best solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we might do is then go to the opposite end of the scale. So we're looking at the 45 juniors, I think, in that case, and then we're going to flip over and look to the 75 kilo seniors. So we're going to look at a very different way of preparing, getting the leg into movement, and but very effective as well. So in this clip, we've got Maeve Magee and Joni Boucher from Canada, and it's in the early rounds of the 2017 World Championships in Ireland. But we can see different ways of preparing the leg. So in some cases here, Maeve will shorten the stance, increasing the distance to her opponent to give herself range to lift the leg and move. So there's a few examples of that there. And again, from shortening, go open side or blind side on the head.
Yeah, I think Maeve actually uses distance really, really well here. So you can see the girl from Canada is actually trying to break through that distance the whole time, and that's her objective. Whereas Maeve is just looking for her opportunity to find the right moment to just clip her, and as we said earlier, almost use her leg like a jab off a front hand, really, because she's able to just poke it out there and find the correct timing and either shoot to the body or to the head quite easily.
Yeah, I think something as well that can happen with the girls is you'll have the initial test and the leg comes up, or a little clash, and the leg stays up just like there, and it then lets them carry forward. And you don't see that as often, I think, with the guys, but we do see that from Tyra previously, from Maeve in this clip, and I think you see it a little bit with Isabelle Schandler later on. But that, there's an initial start and then there's a follow-on without the leg coming down. I think very often on the men's side of things, you'd expect to see the leg come down and then like a strong push into it. So using the rebound off the floor, and I think you made the point that Julio Carlos does that, exceptionally well. Uses the floor like a springboard,
almost like a trampoline, springboard kind of effect of get momentum to kind of push you off again. Yeah, it's very, very effective. But I think something that's worth noting there as well on Maeve's side is the fact that because she is in charge of the distance and she's in control of that distance, the fact that her leg kind of starts off middle, it's kind of deceptive in terms of you're like, okay, maybe I can get through this distance here and I can get the hands, which you can see. And then she's just able to, because she's in control and that's where she's comfortable, she's just able to pick shots. She can either come around the top or go direct into the body quite easily, So I think that's it's a big part of her game, just because she's in control of that distance, and the fact that the knee starts off almost middle section.
Yeah,
it's around
like
just around hip height. Yeah, you can feel that you can get through that quite easily. So it's quite deceptive, and it's a great tool that Maeve has.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that people feel that they can put their hand on it and go through, that they're going to be able to drive it down, and that's where again, I think Maeve, because she's so tall. I mean, what's Maeve? 6'2", 6'3". Like, and in the girls' divisions, well, in any division, but in the girls' divisions in particular, that's exceptionally tall. But it makes all of the movements look quite, spidery and like and long and laboured sometimes, and it's deceptive how hard she actually hits. And those of us who train, we're like, when the shots land, they land, and you'll feel it. So when she's sending shots into the body and people are bringing their hands onto them, like you'll be tempted to bring the hands down, just to stop the shot or to go through and get to hands, because everyone knows, you want to go, if you're going to beat Maeve, you probably want to go to hands at some stage.
Yeah.
But the float up is so dangerous, because the second you start to bring your
Deceptive,
hands down,
very.
It floats over the top, and all of a sudden, it is very deceptive. It just floats up there and it's on your head.
Yeah, especially when people are like making it easy for her as well, standing on the line with her. It's a trade-off that you're probably never going to win. You kind of need to be breaking the rhythm and momentum with your footwork and creating a little bit of angle and things like this if you're looking for any hope of getting through that initial leg. So when you just stand on the line and you're just in a forward motion, forward back, it makes it very, very easy for Maeve.
Yeah, and so often it's people will make the wrong adjustment as they're looking to time the front leg and go to hands, and she just shortens up that front leg, and there it is, it's on the head again,
Exactly, yeah.
So staying with the 75 kilo division, we'll look at Isabelle Schandler, and again she uses the front leg extensively off right and left sides, but it's a bit different from Maeve, and it's a bit different from Tyra in terms of how she gets there, I think.
Yeah. Definitely different. What I really like from Isabelle is the intention. She's looking to get busy all the time with that leg. It's that intensity that she brings with it. Once it comes up, she's looking to make something happen with it all the time. Whether that's to set up the hands or whether it's to get to work, But there's a great work rate there that comes off it, which I think should be admired a lot. And the whole idea of the knee position there as well, changing from body to head. That's very, very effective, because the minute you start shooting to the head, it opens up the body and vice versa. And you can see there she kind of gets through in moments where she shoots to the head but then goes to the body, and then she might shoot to the body, go to the head. So it's very, very effective.
Yeah, she uses her shin as well quite effectively in terms of the blocking position. So when she does get her knee up, that shin is diagonally across her body, and it makes a lot of counters difficult to do. It's hard to go through that directly to hands, because you're going to eat a lot of shin when you do that. And when you look to spin, again, you're very often, like if it's a tight shot like a back kick, you're often finding your way into just more shin. So you're having to make a commitment to go for a more risky shot and go to the head, sometimes to get around it. And I think Ursa in this match does a good job generally of pulling and taking the match off that straight line. But anytime there's a little bit of a chance to settle and get on that straight line, like you said, Isabelle's work rate is high. She's already pushing into it, and she varies that distance. Like, it's not always the same front leg kick. It is turning kick, it is side kick, it's open side, it's blind side, it's at different heights. And you really want that, to make it as challenging for your opponent to make a strategy.
And you can see it there. She makes, like, Ursa is a great kicker herself, but she makes her job quite difficult by being first all the time, and it's a common theme that's coming up in these Fight Chat Friday series that we're doing. The people that can get off that leg first and build some momentum, they seem to get a lot of success.
Yeah. I do like as well, though, that we have this little bit of a comparison or a contrast from some of the earlier ones where, like we said, we had
definitely a different style.
Yeah, Tyra had that little short step off the back foot to set up her shot, going straight away into a high knee chamber and carrying forward. I mean, we can see almost all of the time with Isabelle here, her natural sparring stance starts with the back foot in a rear-facing position. So she's not thinking hands in any way, shape or form from her normal sparring stance. She's not going to have the support for that.
Good point.
It is definitely going to be the front leg that comes at you, and she's making no compromise around that. And her her first step, her body position, her knee position are all around pressure and getting distance. Like you can see in almost all cases, there's a good shortening of the stance. There's quite a bit of a bend on that standing leg, and she's creating forward pressure with it. And I think she needs that as well a little bit because of where her body position is. We said at the beginning with Tyra is so tall, she only needs a tiny little step to give her that forward momentum to carry with. But I think Isabelle here, because she leans the body back a bit further, needs a little bit bigger of a step to bring her center of gravity to where it needs to be to again start getting forward momentum. But
yeah, that's a good point. I think that body position, your posture, and the standing foot, how big of a step you take, I think there's definitely a correlation there in terms of the more you lean, the bigger step you're going to have to take, just as you said.
Yeah.
And that changes the whole look of it. But if we compare it to what we've seen so far, I think there's less reliance on, we say, like flexibility when it comes to the front leg, and it's more about work rate for me. she's looking to get busy there from the go, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, Isabelle is still tall. She has, even without, showing extreme flexibility, she has no difficulty reaching the head. But I think it's, like you said, it's the variation and it's the work rate that make it difficult for Ursa in this fight. And but it's really encouraging as well. So if you're a younger female fighter and you're looking at these like successful competitors, and you're saying, well, what if my hips aren't built quite like Tyra Barada, or you haven't got that background and your legs don't work that way. Well, okay, you have another option in terms of how to get your leg there. And okay, it's an extreme example in terms of, I suppose, in terms of this division. Maeve and Isabelle are both really quite tall for the division. But I think our next clip shows another example of how you can get in there without being exceptionally tall. So we're going to look at Katriona Carr, who now, Katriona fights at 56 senior now. I couldn't tell you exactly what height she is, but she certainly doesn't look out of place in the division height-wise. Like, she doesn't dominate in terms of being tall. Now, when she was a junior in the -45s and -50s, she was certainly tall for the division. Mm-hmm. And I think, listening to some chats with her, she felt, being or feeling tall in her division gave her a certain amount of confidence, to get her started. But eventually she realized, it's like, okay, but I'm not strong. And, above all, I don't want to train to, to be light. I want to train to be skilled and strong and powerful, and you can see it. So this is again a clip from the World Championships in Ireland, early round, against a very experienced and successful competitor, Patricia Piątek from Poland, and again we can kind of see the willingness to carry the leg in.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a difference, all right, in terms of she starts off with her knee position quite lower than what we've seen so far from people with similar styles like the likes of Tyra, but she's able, the angle that she gets on that to go to the head is quite unique, and I don't think you'd see many people able to get that angle to adjust to the head. It's very, very effective. It just floats up there, and it's always the threat, just like that. It's just always a threat for the head.
Yeah, and a bit like Isabelle, she has a much more lean than we would have seen from Tyra initially, and but I think it does allow her that second option. So yeah, she has to have maybe a bit more of a shortening step, and the knee starts lower on the first kick. But when that foot hops in under her, as you were saying, she's then able to hike that knee up, and I think the body position is a little helpful for that. So without having the most ridiculous flexibility out there, the body position allows her to use the mechanics of the body to lift that knee. Now she needs the strength, in the hip to do it, but like this example is just like the speed that leg comes up is really, really exceptional. Like the knee really does jump up there, and I think in that example as well, like Patricia set herself up really quite well to come to hands, and it's just and she does get to hands, she commits and she follows through, but she has to deal with the fact that the leg has floated up really unexpectedly. And so great shot from Katriona, and but it does give us some options to look at, from the smaller fighter's point of view, with Patricia here, like options that she has to deal with that leg.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said there as well, the fact that just because she's a little bit further out, when she makes that initial chamber position, it allows that opportunity to go to the head. Yeah. Whereas if you're trying to squeeze and get close all the time, eventually the space isn't going to be there for you to internally rotate that hip enough to get up there, so you can see that just because she doesn't commit to the distance completely, it allows her to threaten to the head that little bit more.
Yeah. And again, Patricia, like we know, generally she's quite a very capable front leg fighter herself. She's
very leggy herself, yeah. And again, have a look at again. It's Katriona that's starting off and getting on top from the beginning, and it's what we've seen. Like a lot of these matches that we've actually taken clips from, both girls that they've been fighting generally are quite leggy. Yeah. But you can see it just the value that you get from being the one that gets off early on and being on top. Being on top is so important when it comes to a front leg fencing match.
Definitely, and I mean, there's the being on top, and there's two routes to it. So you can have the flexibility route to it, which is you get your leg higher than your opponent's leg, and you've got the momentum route to it, which is the if you can have your leg in the air first and deeper. then you're cutting off the other person's route to getting on top of the leg. So if your foot is already in a position where your opponent can't come over it, they have to go round, and that gives you an advantage in terms of pushing forward. And you can see that.
Point, yeah.
I mean, strategies wise, we can clash, as Patricia's done just there. So that gives you an option. You can go under the leg and take your spin. You can, of course, look to go to hands when the leg drops, but that's the risk. Katriona in that case carried to the head very, very well. And of course, movement wise, we've got options too.
Yeah. But it's like you said there, we kind of flagged it with Isabelle as well, the fact that she's changing between the head and body, head, body, head, body. You don't really know what's coming. I think that's actually one of Katrina's strengths as well, that it's very hard to read. You don't know whether she's shooting middle or whether she's shooting to the head. And for you to make a guess on that and to go on that to counter it directly is risky business, to be honest. You can see here, like, she looks middle and then boom, goes high. So it's hard to get a read on that and to be in the right place, right time to pick off a counter.
Well, that's it. And you look at Patricia's bandy there, like she had to read that the kick was going to go high. If you throw the bandy into a middle side kick, I mean, we've all made that mistake in training. You end up on the floor, and that's just what happens. And the same thing.
But just on that as well, actually, like, do you know the way you say if you're spinning into a middle side kick, generally the principle will be if somebody's shooting to the head or to the shoulder, from the shoulder up, really, you can counter that by spinning middle or going low. So you can come under that as a counter with legs.
Yeah.
And generally, when someone is going middle, you can counter it by coming above it. Yeah. So that's generally how the principle works, but it doesn't work in this situation because Katrina's chamber and knee position is actually just around her hip, but she's just able to shoot between head and body then from there, which is quite unique and very, very valuable for her because it's hard for anybody to get a read how to counter that directly.
Well, that's it. And, I think from a learning perspective, the beauty of watching some of those girls do their work is they've shown 3 or 4 different ways to achieve the same effect off the front leg. So they're forcing their opponent to make choices and to react to what they're doing, and in doing that consistently throughout match after match after match, they're getting results. So it's okay, well, here's my tool of choices, and my opening gambit is what I'm going to put out there first, but I'm going to make it a little bit different each time. So I think the things that I liked from all of them were their ability to vary how they put on the pressure. So going from open to close side in terms of the attack, or going deeper and shallower in terms of the depth of the kick that was going forwards. And even, as you said, going off of left and right leg, which again with Isabelle is quite unique. Most fighters aren't going to change legs as frequently as she does and attack, with the same kind of opening shot off of both legs, which again, putting that little bit more variability into it for your opponent to react to, just forces them to be making more decisions and reacting correctly under pressure. And we know the challenge is, how do you make correct decisions under pressure? You have to be exposed to those decisions over and over and over again, and they're bringing some novelty to it. They're making it challenging. So I think well done to all of those ladies for doing that and for being successful doing that.
Yeah. So even last week when we had a look at our last video, we seen that just being self-aware enough to know your game and what you're good at is so important. And then we seen that here this week as well. But the flip on that is these girls were also able to have variations of that strength, which is so important. As you said there, just being able to have variations, it makes the opponent's job super hard when they try to adapt, because most of these guys will come in with a game plan, and when they go in there and get a feel for it, they'll notice that it's probably not what they expected. And then when you're getting multiple variations of the threats that these girls bring, the same threat but in various ways, it just makes your job so much harder again, that you have to adapt on the fly, which is, I think, for me personally, is one of the most important skills of an ITF fighter or any combat sport, to be honest, is to be able to adapt in there when the match is going on, when you're worrying about them hitting you, and you also have to make correct decisions to adapt if something's not working out.
And then on top of that, then we have the inevitable mirror matches. So like we have that first one with Tyra and Taylor, where it's not an exact mirror, of course, it never really is, but the person who's going to come out on top often in a mirror match is the person who has plan A plus. A little bit of an option, or who has experience against someone who can do what they do themselves. So we've often seen it over the years where a left-legged fighter has a certain advantage, you know, because at home there's probably only 1 in 10 is a left-legged fighter, but when you start getting to the international stage, it's probably more like 40%. You know, there's more left-legged fighters when you go to that higher level, and the left-legged fighter is always fighting right-legged fighters, and so the right-legged fighter is only very, very occasionally fighting a left-legged fighter, and it does have an effect. It's been documented for years in boxing with southpaws, but we can definitely see it where, you know, sometimes that little bit of a difference will make all the difference in a mirror match, where if it happens to be that our kicker is a left-legged kicker versus a right-legged kicker and they have more experience in that, you know, arrangement, that could be, you know, the difference that it makes, you know.
Yeah, and I think the lesson there really is to be different in a way, because the more variance you can bring to that, and the more unique kind of style you can bring, it's going to be a challenge for the person who has to adapt to you then. So again, all these common themes are coming up from the videos, it seems, but if you're able to go in there with your own style and make them adjust to you and be quite unique in that way, so without having a copy style of anybody else, I think that might be the trick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll leave it there for the girls for this week. We're going to do a similar comparison, I think, next week with looking at some of the guys and how they variously set up the blitz or going directly to hands from distance. So we're going to pick out a few different fighters that have a different style and a different way of doing it, and maybe we'll compare and contrast those a little bit. But if people have ideas for things they'd like to look into in the future, or a particular fight or match they'd like us to have a look over, we'd really like to hear from you. So hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or leave a comment on the YouTube videos, and we'll get stuck into it.
Definitely, and if people are taking things from these videos that maybe we haven't addressed, so we covered lots of clips and various points today on the front leg psychic. So if there's something that you've seen and you'd like to add it, make sure and throw it in the comment box, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation going, and that way everybody learns. And that's the point of all of this, I suppose. Yeah,
absolutely. Great stuff. We'll see you next week.